In the third edition of Business Today's flagship event, BT Mind Rush, a thought-provoking panel discussion was organized. How family-run businesses ought to be handling the professionals was the theme of the panel discussion, where top corporate leaders discussed and deliberated on the topic with great insights. The session was moderated by Vivek Law, editor business at TV Today Network.
Do you believe that promoters, once they've built the company, which is typically in the first generation or in the second generation, should step aside and allow professionals to run it? What's your own experience been, and what would your advice be?
I think first thing we need to understand is, as a family member in a business, you have to be a professional. You can't be in a professional organization and not behave and act and work like a professional. On the other thing to keep in mind is that not all professionals are necessarily professional in their outlook. So it's not professional versus family members as much. But we have to learn how to integrate together. We have to learn how to work together in teams that bring out the strengths of each other. And family tends to have a longer-term perspective. I think that's very good to have. But we don't have necessarily all the skill sets and all the tools in our repertoire that professionals might have. So as long as we remember that we're working with people who are very intelligent, who know what they're doing better than us in most cases, I think we'll be fine.
Mr. Anand, you've managed not one family but several families, right, in your company as the promoter group. What has your experience been, first up?
As an organization, maybe 30 years ago, you could call us more of a family organization that inducted professionals. Somehow all the people in the company today don't necessarily see it as a family organization anymore, but see it as an organization made up of individuals, both professionals as well as family members, and who are given authority and responsibility according to their ability to perform on a continual basis over the years. So I think after a point of time, in an organization, especially as it grows much bigger, it's made of a large number of people. Some of them may happen to be family members, but it's the overall way they perform and deliver results on an ongoing basis is how the company is really run.
Let me get your first thoughts, Mr. Dugal. You've again been someone who's in a situation where you run a business and you have a family which is involved with the business, but you run it. Give us a sense of how this balance can be struck.
First of all, I feel that an entrepreneur or a promoter should run the company as long as possible, as long as he's best able to manage it. Because he has the biggest stakes in the company. He typically will be a large or a dominant shareholder. He will have a long-term vision for the company. But a time will come when the promoter is no longer able to manage it. Either the promoter or his successors, in a sense, lose interest in running the business. They aren't qualified. Or in many cases, in the third or fourth generations, the family becomes too large, too unwieldy. There's no natural leadership. There's conflict of interest. And that's when they should hand the keys over to professional management. The whole transition, when it happens, it has to be done very scientifically. It can't be done on a whim and not thought through. And it has to be highly customized to the needs of the company and to the promoter dynamics. So I think in the case of Dabur, we did this transition around 15 years ago. There was a very rigid process which was followed. We engaged consultants who were very good at managing this transition, who had done this in many companies overseas, not so much in India, of course. And you have the examples of very large business houses, particularly in Europe, companies like Tetra Pak or Henkel or BMW, which are still very dominantly promoter-owned, but entirely professionally managed. Now, the promoter size there would be 300, 400, of course, because that's maybe the 10th generation of promoters. So it's a different ecosystem. But I think we should learn from that and how to manage the transition, how to have a family governance council, how to have a constitution in terms of what the promoters do and what the professionals do. And I think Dabur has done it exceedingly well. It's been a very successful story. And the biggest beneficiaries are, of course, the promoters.
Further in the discussion, the panelists also shared their thoughts on planning and managing the succession in the family-run businesses.
Mr. Gala, one of the very leading industrialists coincidentally tweeted that the biggest risk of a family-owned business is doing the succession planning. How much of a risk is that, and how difficult is it? I mean, we've seen some fairly acrimonious breakups as well, destroys relationships, families, etc. Is that, according to you, one of the biggest risks you run if you don't sort things out well in time and create a culture of professional run companies early on in your life?
I would say that succession planning is important for any business, not only for family-owned businesses. I think, who you are going to select as the next leader of the group or the CEO or any other very important key position is an extremely important decision to be made, regardless of whether it involves family members or not. Family members involves a little bit more intricacy, a little bit more sensitive type of decision making, because they're also shareholders. And if there's a difference of opinion between groups of shareholders within the family, certainly that can lead to a lot of bottlenecks. It can lead to a lot of roadblocks. It can lead to stopping decision making completely. If it comes to that, it's a very big risk, definitely.
Coming back to the point of, in fact, let me just take that point further on the succession planning piece. And again, not talking specifically about your company, but given your experience, what has your experience been in terms of how do you make sure that you eliminate this risk by doing a very proper succession plan?
Like he said, every organization has to do succession planning for all key positions. And we have a methodology of identifying the key positions, who are the possible successors, what inputs are required to groom them for those positions, etc., which we evaluate on a yearly basis. For the position of a CEO or otherwise, in our company it's been handled by the, you can say, Nom-Rem committee, who really evaluate the people on the basis of the succession plan and then decide and propose to the board who they would prefer to be the CEO.
One of the trends that we have seen, Mr. Duggal, in the Indian context is that we've seen, even within some family-owned businesses, creating an environment of entrepreneurship, right, with the professionals, with the employees. So it's not just about giving an ESOP, right, though there have been several such instances as well. It's about creating a culture where even the employee feels, at the end of the day, that I own a part of this company. Is that something which you feel is a trend in the right direction and perhaps could balance out this entire discussion or debate in the Indian context?
Yeah, I mean, other than the reward mechanism which I mentioned earlier, there has to be also a tolerance for risk, because the entrepreneur, by the very nature, will have to take risk. And the promoter has to, in a sense, encourage it and not dissuade the professional from taking that risk. So only then you can make a person an entrepreneur. And there are promoters who would choose to do that, other promoters who say, no, let's play safe. But I think the ones which would get the maximum is who unleash the energies, the entrepreneurial energies of the professional and make him a promoter in his own right.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for sharing your perspective with our audience here. Thank you very much, all of you.